Now, it's day 2 of the interviews for a new Chief Justice, and today the only woman of the 4 nominees. President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, that's Mandisa Maya, is in the hot seat. Heidi Giokos is in Sandton, where the interviews are currently being held, and she joins us now for that update. Heidi, we spoke about it earlier on, of course, reflecting on Mr. Matlanga's interview yesterday, but also emphasizing that the only woman nominee in the running to potentially becoming the next Chief Justice, Mandisa Maya, of course, her interview takes place today.
Certainly, Tumela, and I heard that interaction between you and Gareth about Thulasizwe Simelane being our next Chief Justice. It's definitely not going to be me. It's a very complex and difficult position to be in this country. But yes, indeed, I think we must definitely reflect on what happened yesterday with Justice Madlanga. And we are joined by Zikona Ndlebe. Thank you so much for your time. You are from Judges Matter. Let's maybe go through what happened yesterday. It was a very long day for Justice Madlanga, quite a complex interview process. But one of the big things that came out was the fact that his term is running out. He only has about 3.5 years left. How important is this going to be when considering and deliberating on whether or not he is the right person to be the Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court?
Well, it's very important because a Chief Justice plays a very important role. He's the Chief Justice is the head of the judiciary, and they also they have administrative skills. So if Madlanga is appointed, he's going to have only 3.5 years, basically. And that means that the JC is going to have to sit again in 3.5 years' time and consider another Chief Justice. The President is going to have to make that call again soon. So we want someone who's going to be able to sit in office and perform his functions and have enough time to perform those functions and implement the vision that they have for the judiciary. So whether Justice Madlanga is going to be able to do that is something that the JC is going to have to consider and deliberate on, but he did say that it would be unfair for him to be prevented from becoming a Chief Justice because of the fact that he only has 3.5 years remaining on the judiciary.
And also we do know that Acting Chief Justice Raymond Zondo also only has about 3.5 years. But let's move over to some of the ideas of Justice Madlanga, the visions and plans that he had. He specifically touched on a point of making the courts accessible to all, and he spoke about somebody who has no means to get to courts because the money that they have is literally just to put food on the table. And I think that's an important aspect because we often forget that the courts are supposed to be accessible to all, but that doesn't really happen in this country.
That is absolutely correct. And when it comes to access to courts, we're actually talking about access to the lower courts, access to the magistrates' court. That is where the ordinary citizens encounter the law firsthand. And most people don't have the resources. They can't access justice because of how the system is currently. And Justice Madlanga did mention that, which is a very important factor. But he also mentioned the fact that because people can't access courts, there can be online courts, and if there are online courts, there will have to be another system that will allow for people to be able to access courts, because some people don't have the resources, some people are illiterate, and there can be a system that's implemented by the judiciary that will cater for those people. So that is something that he spoke about, which is important, but implementing it is going to take time because we are living in a country which lacks resources for the poor of the poor. And most people need to encounter justice, and magistracy is where most people do encounter justice.
Certainly. I hope whoever is appointed Chief Justice does consider this. Just lastly, Zikona, I want us to touch on who is going to be interviewed today. If Judge President Mandisa Maya is selected, it's going to be, or is appointed as Chief Justice, it's going to be the first female Chief Justice that this country has ever seen. And there is much anticipation about her interview today and the kind of skills and qualifications she possesses. What are you expecting to come out today?
Well, firstly, we should expect that the interview is going to be similar to the one that we saw yesterday. Because of consistency, the JSC should ask similar questions, more or less the same questions that they asked Justice Madlanga. But you're definitely correct. If Justice Mandisa Maya is appointed as the next Chief Justice, it's going to be groundbreaking. It's going to be the first time that South Africa has a woman Chief Justice. We've seen in our neighboring countries, Kenya, Martha Koome, recently appointed as the Chief Justice of Kenya. We know that in the Seychelles, there is a woman Chief Justice, but in South Africa that has never happened. So it's a very important thing, and it's a question that was asked to Justice Madlanga yesterday. I'm sorry to go back, which she actually failed to answer. Is South Africa ready to have a woman Chief Justice? And the answer is yes, but of course, as Julius Malema said, what if Justice Mandisa Maya does not perform up to standard and is not appointed as the next Chief Justice? That is neither here nor there, but the fact is South Africa is ready to have a woman Chief Justice, and if Justice Mandisa Maya performs and is appointed, it is definitely going to be groundbreaking.
Certainly. Thank you so much for your insights. We do appreciate it. That's Zikona Ndlebe, who is from Judges Matter. And I just want to quickly add on a point that she mentioned, Dumelo, is the fact that Mandisa Maya, Judge President Mandisa Maya, actually does not have, if I can call it, the mark against her to say that she only has about 3.5 years left to be at the Constitutional Court. She can fulfill the full 12 years at the Constitutional Court, and that is definitely going to be a consideration, because as Ikona mentioned, what's going to happen if either Justice Raymond Zondo or Justice Madlanga are appointed in about 3.5 years' time? They are going to have to sit again and appoint a new Chief Justice because their term would have lapsed. So that is definitely going to be a consideration, and I think much anticipation because, of course, it is a female.
Absolutely. A lot at stake, a lot, of course, to consider and think about, of course, in making this important decision for our country. Heidi Giokos, I have to leave it there, but thank you so much, colleague, for bringing us this update.